Peace, everybody. Yuya again, just coming from on a self-actualization tour, coming from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm now getting ready to go into Phoenix, Arizona. I'm about maybe 20-30 minutes outside of Phoenix, and I saw this stretch of land and figured I would stop here and speak to you for a moment. But yeah, in any event, the subject of communicating with ancestors has come up, and of course I did a show on that some time ago on working with your Egun, or the ancestors, the spirits of your ancestors, and really defining what that is. And one of the challenges that I see and questions that's consistently asked is, number one, how do I communicate with my ancestors? But if I have an ancestor who maybe was living in a way that I don't approve of or doesn't really speak to healing, is that still someone that I should work with? You know, and the answer to that is found in Western culture in a bit, you know, and I'm going to speak about a science that some people get into, especially when they want to start communication with their ancestors. And that science is the science of necromancy. Okay, necromancy is, you know, I always give you the words first, because sometimes we talk about things and we say words and we don't even know what the heck we're saying. Necro comes from necro, which is Latin, and it means a dead body or something that has died. Okay, and mansi or manchia, which is the original word, manchia means to divine or to prophesize. So necromancy is nothing but communicating with something that is dead. Okay, necro, as you can imagine, is where we get negro. Okay, dead body, which obviously doesn't have the same honor as Moreno. All right, so when you're dealing with necromancy, you're dealing with communication and divination with the dead. Now let's take us to our African thought and calculation. In African thought, there actually nothing is dead. Okay, even in Yoruba construct, when you look at the Yoruba vernacular, the Yoruba language, there's no word for thing. How we have the English word thing. Thing doesn't exist. Everything is a force. Everything, quote unquote. So the closest we have is the word ohun, O-H-U-N, which not only means to listen, but it also means a force. Okay, so we have an understanding that nothing actually dies. Everything is still enlivened, but just in a different space. And that's why, of course, when we're dealing with Yoruba construct, whether it be Ifa or Isha, we come into those communities, the Egun play a very important role in our spiritual work. Okay, so now bringing us back to the science and the thoughts of necromancy. Necromancy is the resurrection of the dead for the purposes of communication. Okay, we never really did that in our tradition because we never considered our ancestors as being dead. Okay, now is it possible for something to die? Certainly. You have triple stage darkness or hell with people who are currently here on the planet. There are people who are zombified and they're dead heads that are walking around. Okay, that would represent a dead energy. Okay, it's not evolving. It may be devolving, which is still movement, but it's certainly not evolving. So when you're practicing art such as necromancy, and I know sometimes it's tempting, especially when you listen to teachers like myself who say, learn everything, get into everything. And I still advocate that, learn everything, get into, you know, learn it all. You don't have to do it all, but learn what works and what doesn't work. But most importantly, it's just like even when you're learning how to eat properly, you can read books all day and go to lectures all day, but ultimately it's about what works best for your system and your constitution. So it's the same thing when you're dealing with spiritual nutrition and you're trying to take in good things. You know, you want to take in things that work best for you. Now, I can tell you most of the time things that are alive and not toxic and still evolving and still growing are the best things to ingest. Now that deals with people, that deals with relationships, that deals with food, that deals with spiritual systems and spiritual archetypes. The ones that are still in motion are the ones you want to work with because they're still working with the spiral. The spiral is so important in our tradition because the spiral links itself not only to Kundalini, but to DNA, the double helix, okay? And also into laser or light code transmissions when you're dealing with the spiral. Okay, so these dead or disincarnate entities or energies, they're always seeking out new spirals or spirits, new energies that will resurrect them. Okay, so when when you're performing the art of necromancy, you're actually resurrecting dead energies. So when you ask now, well, what Egun do I work with? Well, if someone was a deadhead while they were here in this dimension, don't assume now because they're an ancestor, they're not still dead. You know, never make that assumption, because what happens is that now you have to give all of your ashe to resurrect this dead ancestral energy into a place now where it can communicate in this reality. And I want you to think about the mythology, the Christian mythology of the Christ, and how the Christ, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whomsoever shall believe in him will not perish but have everlasting life. Okay, so God gave his son, we're talking about mythology here, to save the world. But the story tells us, in order for Christ to save humanity, to resurrect humanity, surrect or insurrect means to rise, ra or re is light, divine light. So rising back to the divine light, being connected back to source again. In order for that to happen, Christ had to give its life. So you have to ask yourself now, when you're tapping into old dead energy, think about how much ashe you'll have to actually give to bring that energy back into fruition. You'll have to give your life. Now, transcribe this to our social understandings when we're dealing with old thoughts, ideas, concepts, notions, and mores that no longer work for us and that are dead in this dispensation that we're in this season, in this time era that we're in. Sometimes we have this desire to bring up ideas, thoughts, and passions that no longer serve their purpose. They're actually dead. The spirit of them is no longer being fed, but we want to resurrect them. And now consider, this is no different than eating dead food. You know, I'll take a potato chip, for example. If I eat 5 potato chips, I gotta sleep. And I understood it later. Why? Because my body has to take this fried up, you know, whatever it is, because it doesn't know what it is. It has to separate the potato from the oil, from the little bit of water that's left in it. Okay, then it has to rehydrate that potato to turn it back into a potato before it can actually start processing it. And then once it does that, I still got all this oil left over. And this funny kind of half water that's not really water that came out of the potato. And then I'm dehydrated, of course, because I had to take all the water out of my bones and everything to try to hydrate this substance, trying to impostor itself as food. Okay, so I'm not even getting anything nutritious that I can grow and move from. I'm not getting good data, good information, good DNA code. So now the same exact thing happens when you're tapping into dead energies, dead ancestral energies. You're not getting the spiral. You're not getting good DNA code, good spiral information that's going to raise your Kundalini energy. You're getting dead, useless information, but you've given your all to resurrect this energy. And necromancy, that was always the understanding. That's why a lot of times their divination sessions would occur over months. They would spend months just trying to get the energy back. And part of that, a lot of times, was cannibalism was involved, pedophilia was involved, and of course, blood sacrifices were involved. A lot of times they would eat the corpse of the energy that they were trying, or the individual that they were trying to bring back to life. Okay, but and I'm not knocking necromancy. I'm just saying that it's not an African construct. Okay, so because it's not an African construct, it may not totally apply to my bio-spiritual matrix. In the same instance, trying to resurrect dead ideas that are no longer fruitful may also not work well for my bio-spiritual, cultural, or economic matrix. Okay, there are times when we have to know and understand that some things have to be let go. Some people are dead and have to be let go. And if you want to resurrect them, that's fine, but know that you run the risk of giving your entire life over in order to bring them back to the light or insurrect them to the light. So, you know, I just want to speak real quickly on necromancy and, you know, communicating with the Egun. I will do a show on it. You know, when I get a moment, I will do a Foundational Friday, and probably soon there'll be a whole lecture just on communicating with the Egun, how to do it, the syntax of DNA, you know, that junk DNA that they keep telling you is worthless codone. You know, they are now figuring out that it's not worthless. Well, some people are. Of course, we already knew that because we know that Oshun lives in that dark energy, and the junk DNA, quote unquote, is what holds all of the actual syntax for the program. So, like, the junk DNA is like the RAM. It's the actual software code of DNA, and what we use to reproduce, which we call that the triple helix, is just That's the seen aspect. So it's almost like the difference between Ra and Amun-Ra. But in any event, we'll get into that at another time. I just wanted to stop and do a quick video to share with you all why I'm coming into Arizona, Texas. Obviously, it's beautiful. This is a very interesting space because they have the, some interesting gun laws where they can carry, unconcealed. So there's a lot of people riding around in motorcycles with their guns. I'm actually standing in a pool of shotgun and assault rifle shells. So I figured what better place to communicate with you all if not in the middle of a war zone. So yeah, in any event, necromancy, study it, learn it, know it, but understand that it may not be for you, nor maybe resurrecting those who are dead and chose not to enliven themselves, chose not to tap into the light code transmissions in the spiral. It's not really your responsibility, even if they are ancestors, to raise them up or even to listen to them. Okay? So with that, I'm signing off. Peace, and I'll speak to you soon.